Hello and welcome to Keep Coding. In this video, we're going to see about how to create custom hooks using React. And custom hooks are one of the very few features that are quite unique to React, and that is one of the reason I'll use React again and again compared to other frameworks. Custom hooks is an interesting feature. Just like how you create components that are reusable for UI purposes, you'll be able to create reusable logics that can be reused across different components. That can be business logic or logic related to UI. It can be anything, and it's as simple as creating custom components. The rules are quite same. Now we'll see three examples. One, creating the simplest of a custom hook, and then how to see or combine multiple hooks, compose them, and creating wrapper level hooks. And then we'll see an example of converting an API call into a hook. I hope these examples are something that you'll be able to relate uh, to quite a real world situation. So what I'm having here is a newly created React application. I'm just running it, and I'm keeping that output opened in a browser. Now let's see our first example. I'm gonna create a new file, counter.js. It is gonna be a component. I'm creating a simple functional component here named counter, and this is your regular counter. We're gonna have a simple state which is going to be incremented. It will be starting with a default value of 0, and then you are going to have a function which will just increment the counter value. Okay, and then I'm just going to display the count here. We'll be having a button so here we're going to say like increment, and on the on click we're going to bind the increment uh, function. Okay, so now we have to use this the counter. We're going to use this here. Okay, I'm just going to remove everything and simply use the counter component here. Okay, I just added it. Use state is not there. Okay, I imported it. Yeah, so now we got the example running. Okay, so if I'm clicking the increment, it is automatically incrementing. Now this is one of the simplest components, and we're going to try to extract a hook out of it. So if you see, we have a state here and a logic associated with the state. Okay, so now these are, we are having two different declarations. We are not gonna do anything else with the state other than incrementing. In such a case, it is nice to abstract this into a custom hook and expose only the APIs that we'll need. For example, we'll need the counter value, and then we need a method to increment. We don't care about having a set counter or anything else. So to create a custom hook, you just have to define a function that starts with use. Okay, so now I'm gonna give like use count as the name, and I'm giving it like a default property to hold the default value, and then Here, whatever we had, we had one state and one function, right? So I'm just taking it there, and this is supposed to return an object back. Okay, default is a keyword, so I'm changing it as starts with. Okay, and this is not TypeScript, sorry. So I'm passing the starts with as the starting value, and I'm gonna return an array where counter and increment are going to be only there. So here, to use this, I have to use like use count, and I'm passing the default value. I'm getting the counter value here, and then the second function is increment now and not set counter. So I remove the set counter here and then save it. Okay, so now I got the same functionality, but I have extracted the logic into a hook. So the reason is we have a cleaner API now, and then we'll be able to reuse this to another component. I'll be able to just use this as use count in some other component, and I'll get the same functionality. So the rules are quite same for the custom hooks and functional components. This hook will be executed every time this component is executed, and in whatever order we are defining the hooks within it, and the function within it will execute the same way if you are defining it within the functional component itself, and then it will return the new value every time, and this can be used in the JSX or within your components logic. Let's see a second example by evolving the same code. Okay, so assume that we need functionality like this count should be incremented automatically every second instead of we pressing the increment button. Okay, so in such a case we'll need a use effect, and then we have to do the set interval thing and then increment the count. Okay, for that we are going to create a hook. I mean, we can use the same hook, but then why I'm doing this is that to show you that we can wrap custom hooks within other custom hooks, so that just like component composition, you'll be able to compose the hooks and come up with better logic. So the timer is gonna have a starts with and then interval as its properties, and it'll have like it'll have the same thing. Um, it is going to use the same counter, but then it is going to have a use effect, and in that use effect it is going to run a function on a set interval, and that function is going to increment the counter every second, so that not every second but based on the interval. Okay, so this should run only on the mount. Now use effect is not imported it, and starts with has to go here. Now instead of use counter here, I'm going to use, sorry, we missed the return value. The return value is here going to be just the counter, because we don't need to send any controls back. So I'm just having counter here, and then I'm going to have use timer with a default value of 0 followed by 1 second as interval. Okay, and then we won't have this increment action anymore. I'm refreshing it. Yeah, so the count is automatically incrementing every second now. But if you see the API, it is extremely clean. You're just using a timer, and automatically you'll be getting new value every second, and that value will trigger a re-render to this component. So the idea is that you will not just be able to use use state, but then you can use use effect and other hooks and other custom hooks, just like how we are using use count here, and build a complex logic based on all these simpler hooks. Now we are going to see our third example, which is going to be an API call. I'm going to create a new file named apcom.js, and here I'm going to create a new component. Okay, so in this component, what I'm going to do is that when this component is mounting, I'm going to fetch some fetch from an API and then set it in some state. Okay, so I'm having a state as data, and while fetching I want to have a loader state so that I can show the loading text or icon. So I'm having this as false by default, and before fetching I'll be setting set loading of true. And what am I going to fetch? uh, Starwas API. Okay, so if you don't know this, this is a famous open API where you'll be able to make API calls and get the data. Okay, to play around with front-end applications, it is always useful. So if I had something like this, slash people format equal to JSON, then I'll receive all the people records here. Okay, so this is what I'm gonna fetch now. So I'm copying that URL and pasting it here, and then on the success response is response.json, and then from the output I'm gonna set the data. Okay, so here I'm having the data in results, so I'm gonna set it like set data of response.results. Right after this has to run only on the mounting of the component. After setting it, if I'm facing any errors, then I'm going to print that in the console. And then finally, I need to clear the set loading. Okay, so I need to set it as false. So all of these people characters has a name, and we are just going to print the name in a list. Okay, so I'm having an unordered list, and I'm gonna map the data. We'll give the name as the key as well. Okay, now this is supposed to work. Let's include this in the app component and we'll see. Okay, and let's go. Okay, use state is not defined. Let's define it. Map of undefined. Okay, initially the data is not having anything, so this is why we're gonna have like, if it is, if data is true, only then we're going to display the data. Okay, refreshing it and it is running. Okay, so now we are printing all the data. So now I'm just want to use the loading indicator. If it is loading, then I'll be just showing a loading text, and otherwise I'll be showing this. Okay, just formatting it. If you see, for a fraction of second the loading appears, and then the data is appearing. So this is a lot of work. Every time we're making a call, you are creating a state and keeping it for maintaining the data that is returned from the API, and then you are having a use effect to call the API, and then you need to maintain one more state for holding the loading state. So it will be great if you can make a hook out of it. So I'm just using something simply here only for the get calls. So I'm going to create something like use fetch, which will take the URL and it will return the data and loading indicators from the hook. Okay, so now what do we need here? We need this use effect to be here, and I need to be, let's keep this for future use. I need to fetch any URL that is given here. Okay, and then I need the loading state and data here, and then I'm just gonna return data comma, sorry, let's keep loading as the first one, loading comma data. Okay, so similarly you can return the error also in the same you can create a state for error, and then when the error is happening you can set to that state and you can return that as well. For simplicity, for demonstration purpose, I'm not doing that. And then I'm just gonna use this API here, which is like use. So I need to create a variable for loading and data, and I'm gonna use fetch, and I'm gonna pass the URL. Okay, so this is the URL. I'll be passing only the URL and I'll be getting the loading and data automatically. And loading is not defined. I think it is. Let's refresh. Yeah. Okay, so that's it. We'll be able to use this same use fetch in any number of components, and you will be getting loading indicators so easily, and getting the data or error handling, everything we can have in single place, and you'll be able to use it. For example, a lot of libraries has been built around it. Use SWR or use query. um Sorry, the package name is swr and react queries. They are having hooks like use swr and use queries. Okay, so they are very useful for fetching from APIs and keeping the state like loading and catching the data locally. So check out those libraries, and whenever you need something simple, it's better for you to build your own something like this. It didn't take a lot. For example, it was easier to refactor as well. I was just moving all the data and effects directly to a separate function, and it is working just like how it did earlier. So that's how convenient hook is. It is easy to make, it is easy to refactor and make hooks out of existing components. So try out custom hooks. If you haven't created custom hooks, start using them as good as using your custom UI components, which you'll be creating in every project. So if you like this content, subscribe to this channel. I'll post more content related to React and other front end stuff and some of the back end stuff as well. Thank you.